Hello, hello, everyone. It is Kenyon here. It is Basketball Rewind. I am joined by these two amazing people who people keep clamoring for, and I do too. So that is Beyond the Locker Room as well as Coach Roache. First and foremost, most importantly, we will say, Coach, I'll start with you. Are you okay? And how are you?
Well, I'm fine for now. Thank you for asking. Beginning a lot of shout outs on Twitter as well, kind of from our Raptors slash NBA community that we have. I really appreciate it. The wildfires out here are really bad, something that we're not used to. When you're next to the Atlantic Ocean, you wouldn't really think about that too much, but because it's so cold. But climate change and global warming has kind of changed that for us. So for now, I am here. If I have to be evacuated, I will deal with it then. But I just want to give a shout out to all the volunteer firefighters, the um, DNRR workers as well. I know the military's coming in. Thanks to thank you federal government for doing that. Just everybody that's been involved in this process. It's been a nightmare for so many families who have been displaced and lost their homes and stuff like that. But we will rebuild and we will become better for it as well, hopefully.
And Beyond the Locker Room, I think you're okay, but I would still ask, how are you doing?
I'm fine, man. I just want to second the sentiments there by Coach. Like it's a really difficult time. And really, obviously the East Coast, but even across the country, there's a lot of heat.
Yeah.
Is just you see some of the maps, some of the the heat maps. All you see is a lot of orange and red across the country. It's something that I don't think I ever really recall in this case, at least for a long time, to see this type of heat, especially this early of the season. It might get in July, but we're now literally June 1st, right? So it's kind of it's scary, but as Coach said, it's great to see everyone pitching in and trying to help everybody out in different communities. So that's all everybody involved.
Absolutely. And obviously, you know, if there is any sort of charities or anything like that that you know of that you want to plug at the end, definitely plug it. I know there's things like the Red Cross and whatnot, which are always important. So, you know, I think that that's really important. With that being said, there is some news that we want to get into. We're going to talk about the coaching search, but before we talk about the coaching search and one other thing, I wanted to talk about Nick Nurse's first day because he rolled up in a fancy suit, looking sharp as ever, and he was
Wear a
met.
suit actually the Raptors. Just when you said that, like, has he
Yes,
ever worn a suit for us?
I don't, I don't know actually. That's a
With a
good.
lot of with a lot of like track suits and style, and sweaters. I don't remember
Yeah,
suit.
yeah, yeah, yeah. This is true.
Maybe when you get hired, I think he wore a
You wear
suit.
the suit then? Yeah, if someone
Yeah.
wants
Yeah.
to go back and check that out, I'm sure someone's already gonna be posting the comments about the first day of the Raptor hire. I wonder a little bit, but it doesn't it doesn't kind of stick in my
Doesn't
mind with
resonate.
yeah, yeah,
Just the NN hat and the yeah.
yeah.
So Nick Nurse's first day, he with his suit was met with a an unstoppable force, which is the Philly, I guess, media, if you will. They are not as nice as the Toronto media, and I may actually put the talking segment right around here for myself, so that people can hear the
To
audio.
get to the playoffs in your one team, and that's a 2 month long journey, and you got to be better at the end of those 2 months than
Do
you
you
were
want
in the
James
first
Harden
round.
back?
Pardon me?
Do you want James Harden back?
James Harden's a great player.
That
Yeah.
didn't answer the question.
Well, I would say this is that James has a decision to make, and I'd be very happy if he came back.
What are your thoughts based on what you saw, either of you, in terms of the way that he handled that?
Um, I posted online. I posted on Twitter. I kind of sang, if you know the old sitcom, A Different World. I sang kind of the first lyric of it. It's a different world from where you come from. It's essentially the summary of it. And he learned really quickly. Philadelphia media does not play. Someone else, I can't remember. I love to give the credit who it was in this case here, made a great point. I think I know the name, but I don't want to state it in case I have the incorrect name. And made a great point following my comment about how the media is combine or consist of how it's set up in this case in Toronto. Essentially, a certain amount of people that follow the team are employed by the same people that own the team, right? Which then creates a very kind of unusual circumstance you have compared to most sports teams in this
Right.
case, right?
It's almost like an incestual relationship in a
Right.
way.
So there's only so
Yeah.
hard you can push in this case here because there's no. And I'm not trying to skew the credibility of the journalist in this case here,
Yeah.
but it's an unwritten rule that there's only so much you can push in this case here without doing it. That's the reason why it's great to have more independent media in this case have the ability to actually go in there and talk to and find out more about that, be it with the players or with the coach. Philadelphia doesn't have that situation.
No.
It's a lot ink stain, what's this? He's coming in there and they don't care. Philadelphia
Yeah.
has been notoriously.
You didn't answer my question.
Right. Yeah. There's no kind of like, oh shucks. I always like to say with nerds, they like to put on the Miss Western oh shucks type of deal. And that's how he usually kind of gets out of stuff when he gets anything challenging from the
Yes.
Toronto media. That won't fly in Philadelphia.
Yeah.
Immediately saw the tone change and he's like, oh, and you can see him already trying to figure out like, okay, I better come up with something a little more like substantive in this case to get across to get past this question.
Yeah, I mean it's before Coach steps in here, I'll say really quickly, it's super interesting to see that happen because you think of how nice our media has been, and yet there are a number of instances over the years, particularly this year when he was getting quite frustrated with how the team was performing, where he was sniping at the media at times when they were asking questions. I do not think that he can get away with that in Philadelphia. They finally kind of clap back at him at the very end, but I think at this point it's like from the jump they're like, who you be? So
That's the thing I found interesting when his name was involved with Milwaukee, Phoenix, and of course Philadelphia.
mm-hmm.
One of the things when you decide to take the Philadelphia job, of course, there's the Embiid aspect of it, which is already kind of like, okay, never mind the personalities, and then the physical, the way he plays from a physical standpoint, Embiid's body. That was the second thing. But the third thing I mentioned was if we try to find in this case a soft landing spot from where a media that will be kind of favorable to how he likes to actually position himself. Of the three, that was the worst choice of the three.
Yes, Milwaukee probably would have been
Milwaukee would have been
more
a safer
ideal.
choice. Even Phoenix, more laid back West Coast thing, that might have been a little. I mean, the amount of stuff they let the owner get away with, the previous owner, they probably would have let a lot of stuff. Right.
Sadly, but yes, true. So yeah, Coach.
I can confirm that he was wearing a suit when he got hired by the Raptors.
Okay.
Gray suit, purple shirt, purple tie, very Toronto-ish.
Very nice. All right, good job.
Nice.
Today he was wearing white and blue, very Philly-ish.
Nice.
So,
Okay, well there we go.
yeah, I mean, look, if he thought Doug Smith and Michael Grange and Josh Lundberg were tough, it's going to be way worse when he goes to Philadelphia and deals with their media. I mean, it's an interesting sports city in terms of how they use the Eagles and the Flyers, and the Phillies. They are a very hardcore, passionate fan base. I remember last year, I think it was Game 5, first round against us. They booed them right off the court, the fans. When they lost us by, I think, by like 15, 20 points, something like that.
They booed Santa Claus. They don't care in this case in Philadelphia, okay?
They do not care. Yep. And especially since the expectation is championships, which it should be. You got a talent like Joel Embiid and Harden, Maxey. The expectation should be championships. So look, I kind of like what Beyond said. If he was looking for a friendlier media relations team, probably Milwaukee or Phoenix would have been place to be. But with Philly, man, you're just in the eye of the beast. The media all the time. So I'm sure Nurse's blood pressure will go up the odd time next year.
Yes.
Yeah, yes. It's a it'll be interesting to see if James Harden does come back.
Right.
Which
I just make one last point if we're moving off.
Oh yeah, go for it.
I'm not sure if you two saw this. I know, Coach, obviously you've been busy with a lot of things. It's understandable. But if you saw, there was a little bit either from a Twitter or Instagram post of him playing the night before it was officially announced. Now, I said this before, and I say it again. I said it on Twitter. There is an element. All coaches have an element. No disrespect, coach in this case, have an element of narcissism in it. I think in this case, certain positions that is just the case. For example, you want to be head of state, you're gonna have a little narcissism in you in this case here. I think a coach has to have some of that in them, especially to be a good coach. I'm not saying that at all. But Nick Nurse does seem to have a different type of level of it than most coaches. We've now seen the coaching carousel. We'll get into that. All sorts of folks hired. I didn't see anything about them doing anything else where they're doing they're rocking out the day before. But it's always about the Nick Nurse persona that has to come out at some point during these type of these watershed moments. I found that fascinating. That the videos come out. It's almost like yeah, man, I'm Mr. Cool Dude here before the thing. I'm just chilling out here, strumming a few licks in this case here before
Did you see the caption that
no,
was with it? So if you
I
paid
did not.
attention to the caption, it was basically like if only Philly had done the deal earlier. It's like really, it's instead we're gonna get into the Raptors coaching search as it has slowly been excruciatingly moving forward. And guess what? There's three of us here, and we've finally narrowed it down to three. So just so people know, we are not hiring a podcaster. Okay. The other thing is we are not hiring a TikToker. Okay. So thank goodness.
A little rough for your fellow provincial member there in this case here for the BC constituent, man. Like, he's a Hall of Famer. Like, come on now.
Hey, you know what? My old roommate used to play him all the time in NBA, and I was like, I am not playing as Nash. I don't like Nash. Didn't like Nash then. Didn't like Nash now. But all respect to Nash, he actually did have an amazing career. I was never a fan.
Never traded from Dallas. That's a whole nother discussion. But
yeah, yes, for sure. But we to kind of get to the point here, I would say that the three finalists are, drum roll, it is Sergio, so our old one of our old assistants from, I believe, the year that we won the chip. We also have Jordi Fernandez is still there, and a man by the name of Darko. I'm not going to try to pronounce this man's last name. I believe he is Serbian. He is a associate coach for the Grizzlies, if I'm not mistaken. So those are the three candidates. Before we go any further, I will quickly ask, who do you guys all want? I've done some research on all of them. Jordi is the person that is mine. So yeah, who are yours?
I'll just say I thought Adelman was still in the mix. You said top three, but I thought I read an article saying there's like a few others. I thought Adelman was still in the mix as well too. But fair enough. If that's the case, I'll work with the three I had because he was the one I kind of liked the best. But of what's remaining, I'll go with Jordi in this case here, man. I think at least from that standpoint, if you're looking at a team and you're looking for a team that has kind of an offensive type of philosophy that you would want to see with the team you have right now, that you want to get to, with his work there, Sacramento. He seems that he has a certain persona about him that I think I like a little bit, a certain type of toughness, if you want to call it that way. From a few times I heard him speak in this case of how he wants things done. I'm not saying he has to be a tyrant, not like that, but there is a certain authority that he wants to speak with that I kind of like. A few times I've heard him, speak, which is good. I got no issue with the other guys. I think my only concern with Sergio is that I just want all cut ties from the past cut from the Nurse era. I don't want anything. I don't want anyone had some type of relationship with other folk. I don't want any of that. I just want that's it. So that's my thing with him. The gentleman from Memphis. It's interesting. I do find it interesting. I'll throw this out to coach as well too. Is that I understand we don't want quote the retread coach. I get that, but at the same time though, with the exception of Jordi, it isn't like the other. It's not like anyone's been knocking down the doors of the other guys. Does that concern you a little bit?
It's an interesting approach. I mean, we heard nothing about Monty, who just went to Detroit. We've heard nothing about Bud, who interviewed for the job before Nurse did. I think that was Messiah's guy. He turned it down. We never heard anything else about the other head coaches, Doc Rivers. We haven't heard anything about Doc. it's almost like Masai wants to go in a different direction with this team.
Well, here's the concern I'm starting to have here, and this is where I actually will give, strangely, I would say I can understand where Nick Nurse is coming from this point. Is their old phrase in this case? I'm paraphrasing a little bit, but they take an old phrase Bill Parcells used to say in this case here. Hey man, if I'm going to cook the meal, man, I should get the chance to pick the ingredients. In other words, right? And I think what's going on here a little bit is that it seems like the front office wants to make sure they have a guy in this case that they don't have another Nick Nurse situation happening in this case. That's my sense of what's going on. They feel they can have enough autonomy that if we say play X guy, the coach that they pick will play X guy and won't say anything about it. Because I'm just looking here at the group that we have right now of the guys left of what Hopeful mentioned, and I'm just like, even top assistants have been talked about right at the beginning. We talked about Jama in this case here as one. We got Quinn out there in Miami. We just talked about Adelman in this case here. They're all top level guys everyone's talked about as potential assistants that could get, Charles Lee was another one. We could potentially get a job in this case here. They were all the short list of like next guys up. And none of those guys are on the short list. Even if you expanded it out to your friend from BC and the podcaster, no one's asking for these dudes. So it makes me wonder once again, what's the rationale? What's going on here a little bit about why this set of guys are getting picked? I'm not questioning they can't coach. I'm just asking in this case when it comes to a power dynamic, are we starting to see something here where it's like, oh, we're not going to go through that again?
I mean, it's interesting because you see, there's a lot to unpack here, right? Actually, I'll let Coach go because he was gonna say something first. So.
Hey, sorry, Coach.
Well,
Coach.
yeah, no, Jordi is my pick as well. I mean, I've heard and read that he's proponent of kind of having his big men be versatile on the offensive end, and you take a look at Jokic when he was in Denver. We see how just great Jokic is and how he just plays basketball in general. I think you saw a little bit from Sabonis this year as well. I'm sure Jordi had an impact on that. You kind of wonder what that will do for Pascal Siakam and maybe more so Scotty Barnes moving forward, and what kind of development he can have on their games. Because Scotty and Pascal both have the IQ to be like that, like those guys. I'll say Scotty might have more upside in doing that, if that makes sense. Because so I think Jordi is my guy as well. I will say this about Steve Nash. I've told you guys privately. The man went through a lot in Brooklyn. He had a lot of circumstances working against him there. I'm not saying that he's my first choice. He's not. It's Jordi Fernandez for sure. And I think maybe like a David Adelman, it's probably going to come in second for me for the job. But I know that Nash had a lot working against him. Was it really a Steve Nash team? It never for him being a first time coach going into Brooklyn. Everybody knows that was KD, Kyrie's, and James's team. Like, did he have a chance to put in his own systems and stuff like that? Who knows? Maybe he did, but maybe he didn't at the same time. So I will say that Nash will probably coach again sometime in the NBA if he wants to. I think he's a finalist for the job, but I think Masai, by going with Jordi or Adelman, he's probably going in a different direction. And it might not be we're going to tear this down, rebuild. I don't mean so much that way, but it might be a step back, possibly, in order to take 2 steps forward. Because do you really think this core is good enough, regardless of who's the coach?
I think going back to your point about the offensive philosophy. I think what is interesting with the coaches we're talking about, be it if Adelman's in the mix, some people say no, some people say yeah. But if you go to Jordi, both of them, what they have in common is that they also, they definitely have a lot. It's the big men that they use a lot, but it's also a lot of motion. And I think that this team needs motion, like how you need water in the Sahara Desert. Like they need it badly. So I'm happy from that standpoint, at least. I mean, Sergio in this case might be very similar in this case when it comes to how he runs Spain's offense. They had a lot of motion too. And obviously, once again, you see Gasol playing a very similar type of way how Sabonis is playing. Obviously, Jokic is the ultimate version of that. So maybe you could use a Scotty in that type of role where he's kind of, he's like, the high post, and he's kind of surveying from there. So you can see the similarities of some of the coaches they're looking at. But I think that is the good thing. It's, again, I think my overall thing that I'm happy about is they seem like they're leaning towards some more offensive minded coach. Because I think sometimes everyone gets caught, like it's almost like it becomes like it's the right thing to say. Oh, defense, defense. Look, man, last time I checked, the game of basketball is that you get more points the other time, guys. Okay, like what's all said and done.
Yeah. And I'm just reading something, so I'll show Yahoo Sports here. It is saying how Jordy, at one time, I guess, publicly stated his hesitancy regarding positionless basketball. We all know that the side probably
I was
went.
actually going to get into that in just a second.
Oh,
So,
okay. No, great.
um,
Please
s-
elaborate
so
more on that.
yes. So a couple things first. So I'm just doing the names based on the most recent article coming
No,
from
I get yeah, no,
Mark Stein,
mhm.
which is outlining that it's Sergio, Jordi, and Darko are still among the candidates. So you're right. It could be Rick Adelman and others as well.
That's the father.
Yes, yes, yes. So that's the first thing. You made a point beyond a really interesting point, and we've kind of teased this out in other ways and other conversations, but I do want to talk about it here right now, really quickly. Um, so I mentioned in my nurse video about how nurse and the front office didn't really get along at times this season, and I thought that that was done because I thought that he didn't play the bench, which fair enough, that's his decision, and I don't necessarily fully disagree with his decision, but I still think it was the wrong move. He didn't play the bench because I don't think he thought that they were good enough to play and win him games. Because I think for him, he values winning based on his book and based on his own words. If we're to believe that he didn't fully do a ghostwriter, and so I think while I think his how do I put it this way? I think that his job security wasn't in jeopardy if he did that. It became insecure as a result, or at least partially in as a result of that. Not you know following, I guess, the marching orders, if you will. Um, you know, possibly doing certain moves or using the players as chess moves in this weird game with the front office. Again, to me, the smart move is if you think they aren't good, then prove they aren't good, and then go back to the front office and say it's not my fault. You're the one that put the team together. That's probably what the long term was, but I don't think that Nick Nurse, while he is a strategic thinker, while I think he's a very brilliant guy in some ways in terms of the X's and O's, I also think that sometimes people can overthink things, or they forget that it's not just the smell of their own fart that matters. So, with that being said, that's something that I wanted to touch on. That now to get to real actual Freudian slip, Coach Roache. um, my bad. I'm sorry. To get to a point that you were saying, yeah. So I heard a interview with Jordi, who I think we're all okay with Jordi. He was talking about positionless basketball, and he was talking about basically, and this is paraphrasing here, and I'll try to pull up the thing and put it around here. But basically, he was saying that
How important do you think it is, or how vital is it for guys in the NBA to be versatile?
It's very important as long as you can be efficient. Because trying to do too much and not producing, at the end of the day, we all get asked to do a job to produce certain things, right? And positionless sounds really good, but a lot of times it gets, misunderstood. Um, you cannot be trying to do too much and then at the end you do nothing.
people misunderstand positionless basketball. It's important to be versatile. However, and I'm doing this off the top of my head but I viewed it twice. It's important to make sure that people are optimized in those roles and make sure, this is the key thing, people, that they are efficient in those places. And so it sounds like he puts a lot of emphasis on putting people in the right places to succeed. He said a lot of other things in that interview, and I will, if I find it again, I know it's linked in one of my playlists for my personal account. I will try to link it in the description down below so people can check out the full interview, see what it was. It was with one of the Sacramento Kings social media managers. Really good interview. Definitely check it out. But it was interesting because it's like he seems to like positionless, but it's like not just toss out a bunch of dudes and see what happens.
Right.
So and is very specific about it. So I think that's to both of your points. I think that's something where perhaps it's helping to select a direction. It's bringing someone that is going to help with structure. And to be honest, in terms of what I think what you were saying, Beyond, um, it's bringing someone in who can potentially put things into place how they should be in a more cohesive and natural way.
No,
Thoughts?
no, I totally agree where you're coming from, and that's why I did like why I mentioned aggressive. That's the type of stuff I'm talking about, where he definitely has a philosophy of how he sees basketball, and I don't mind that. Once it's not a religion, I think you still have to have some flexibility, but there at least is some type of philosophy where it's like, okay, there's grounding principles of how I want this team to play. And in this case, how you're saying so is the way I kind of see it as well too. Yeah, it's like you have a 6'10" guy. If you do a lot of great things, fantastic. But there's certain basic things that a 6'10" guy has to do, right?
Did you hear what CJ Miles said today? Because CJ Miles was coached by him.
Well, okay.
So CJ Miles actually said, this is from Yahoo Sports, and I can link that down below as well. He basically said, unlike a lot of coaches, you would go to Jordi and maybe a player says, I want to try this. And Jordi wouldn't just say no. He'd say, okay, we're doing this. Let's see if we can fit that into our scheme. So it doesn't sound like he's so rigid.
There was never a time when I came to him that it seemed like he didn't want to, or he wanted to, no, we need to do this instead. This is what you want to explore. Let's explore that. And then it'll sprinkle in what needs to be sprinkled in on top of it, but don't just negate it. Because I think that happens sometimes when guys come, it's like, what about this? And the coach has an idea of what they want you to do. So they just shift you straight over there. And it was like, no, I was just trying to learn. This happened to me. I wanted to know how I could do it better. But they're like, no, you shouldn't be doing that anyway. Let's just do that. And I think the best thing about him and the rest of that staff was they were open to exploring the game. And you see that with guys, with the younger coaches coming up to the pool now, because the game is played so open. They've allowed that growth to happen. And I think that was one of the great things about it. He was great. Obviously a younger guy too, so relatability was good. But great energy. Love to be in the gym. That's all you can ask for as a player.
From a Spursian standpoint, a lot of people were like, I want, I want Bud because he can, do that. You want someone who is somewhat flexible, maybe not to the point where it's literally like a mad experiment and poof, and it blows up in their face or whatever. You don't know what's going on. You don't have the fume hood on, for those of you who have been in a chem lab. But at the same time, you want there's a balance, So I won't go into my philosophy.
Word, right? Yeah. The balance of it, and just for me to clarify for folks in this case here, Jordi was one of the hot assistants, so he's one the kind of he's actually the only one of the group. If it's the three that you're talking about to remaining. I don't mean with the other, so fair enough. But with the Fernandez, with him in this case, what I do like in this, if he's picked in with his philosophy, let's put it this way: it's almost, I said, it's the Goldilocks theory. We had one coach in this case that was probably not flexible enough.
Yep.
We then moved to another coach. Whether it's probably in this case, that's all he did in this case. He never had set lineups for anything or rotations for 2 days.
Hot, too cold.
Right. So maybe we might finally get just right for the porridge. Finally, we might finally get there.
Hopefully, we won't take a nap on the way, and
yeah, we might finally get here with this coach.
Yes, Coach.
Yeah, kind of like what Beyond said. I mean, we always remember we felt Dwayne Casey was a little too rigid at times, not wanting to give more leeway. I know actually at the time, I think Nurse was the one who wanted the bench mob. He's like, we need to play this bench, and it worked. The 2017-2018 season. And then about 3 years later, I say 3 years, I'm not going to count so much the championship year, but then it was the Raptors were last in bench minutes almost every year of Nurse's tenure.
Mm-hmm. You got progressively worse each year.
Yes. So I think what Beyond said about Fernandez maybe being the balance of the two. I think that is certainly possible as well. And I just look at his experience. Where's he been? What have you done? He was in Cleveland with Mike Brown and LeBron James. Okay,
then
that's
Mike
pretty
Malone.
Good. And then he went, and then I know he was in Denver from 2016 to 2022. He's been with Mike Malone. He's been with Jokic, Jamal Murray, and now he was with Sacramento last year. Sacramento was like the story team, you might as well say, until the first round, which they got eliminated by Golden State, because nobody saw Sacramento doing what they did or expected them to do what they did this year, I should say. So, I think Jordi, and he's young, 40 years old. I think there's probably a factor of, I can relate to these guys, maybe understand a bit more of what they're going through. Not to take away from Nurse or Casey, stuff like that, but there is a factor of, okay, maybe I can relate to a Pascal more, or I can relate to Chris Boucher more, or someone like that.
I think you hit on something that I hope, I don't care which coach it is, that I hope is the case. That when they come in, and it kind of goes to the discussion we were having yesterday on Spaces, but it's all part of the same discussion. If a coach comes in, I want them to understand, I'm not saying pamper, but treat your star player like a star player. And what I mean by that is have him as the priority, that whatever we're doing, that in this case we get the best out of him, wherever we're running, wherever players we're supporting around him, whatever philosophy we're doing, that it's centered around what can we do to make him, and if you want to put in a couple other key pieces, the best players they can be, because that is something in this case that has been lost for the last 4 or 5 years, and it's something that we need to get back immediately. So that coach needs to come in, and obviously that starts with setting a pecking order to some extent and getting people in line on what they have to do. And I like that part about Fernandez stating those type of things. Like, you need to have some type of structure around certain things, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's definitely something that's interesting. I wanted to get into another part of this, but I will say this to defend Nurse a little bit. Again, you coach the team that you have. I don't always think that he coached the way that he didn't always truly coach the team that he had, but
No,
he didn't always have the tools either.
true, but I will go back to your first point and say that there's opportunities where he could have gotten more juice out the orange.
Oh, for sure. For sure.
Coached to the strengths of the players he had instead of trying to coach against the strengths of the players they have at times.
Yes, I guess I'm just trying to provide some balance. I know some people think I'm too harsh on Nurse, and other people, you're too harsh on this person. So I'm trying to say, like, hey, there's, in terms of the Bill Simmons blame pie, there's a lot of blame pie to go around. It's a big blame pie.
Yeah.
But yes, so I agree. He didn't.
Some other guys in this case that we'll get to.
Yes. I'll say one last thing about just Nurse and coaching and stuff like that is in terms of and this is interesting. I don't know if you heard, but there was, I don't know if it was you or if I just saw it on the on Twitter, but there was a interview going around about Nurse talking about how he was talking about the first round of the 2019 playoffs. Yes. and that was really interesting because he was talking about this in a way where he was saying, well, I took Kyle aside and I took Kawhi aside, and I'm like, you're going to do this and this is, and I'm like, well, so wait, and what triggered it is you said treat star players like star players. I think that's fine, but I think that in terms of a punishment system or whatever, or an accountability system, I hope that he doesn't just treat certain guys where I'm only going to throw your name out in the ethos without talking to you because I don't really care about you or you're not that important on this team. You have to earn that versus, whatever it is. I think it should be kept in house, and I think that that's probably a better way of doing things. But that's just we don't have to go and talk about that too much. Really quickly, so we've taken a long time to do this. We've taken a long time to do this coaching search. I'm wondering, are you worried at all that this is kind of a foreshadowing for how the front office will continue to operate for the rest of the offseason?
Coach, you want to take this first?
I hope not. How's that?
You sound hopeful over there.
Yes.
Defeated.
I like the due diligence. I like that they are exhausting their coaching options. I think that Jordi has been a name that's been interviewed by, I think, multiple teams. My understanding is Steve Nash has not been. My understanding is Sergio Scariolo has not been. David Adelman possibly has, but we don't know. It would make
Yeah.
sense. He's Mike Malone's top assistant. It would make
Yep.
complete sense if he was. It's been a really exhaustive process for them, and it probably should not have taken this long, especially with all the other coaches who became available on the market too, which typically doesn't happen in the run of a year. Like you never have a Monty Williams and a Bud and a Doc Rivers and a Nurse available usually in one off season. That does
This
not
felt like
happen
an
very
NFL
much.
firing. Like usually I call it Black Monday after the playoffs. This felt like when the season's done. This is what this felt like NFL wise. This
Yeah.
is NFL session how this went.
Yeah. So I do hope that, post draft that their moves, their plan will be better executed, more efficiently, more I'll just plainly say it quickly. I think, well, if you take that approach in free agency and trades, those offers might not be there, or those players might not be there. Happens with the coaching search that they are there, that we know of.
Has that ever happened to us?
True,
No,
we are not
you don't.
exactly a
You
free
don't
agent
say.
destination. So
No, I mean, like, have we ever waited too long?
Yeah, that's what Jordan.
I'm more talking. Have we ever waited too long and ended up with a certain Australian man? Shouts to him, by the way, as well. So, just to keep it moving, prospect news. So we heard something really special. Masai. You know that he likes, people that may be reaches at times. And beyond, what are you okay?
Go ahead, continue.
Okay, I'm just there was news. It was announced today that a team has given Bilal Koulibaly who we will cover on this channel for sure, a promise, and it is a team within the top 14. I think it was before 14.
Yes, correct.
So
Before 14.
top 13 team, and below that it says that Toronto would be typically one that would be impressed. If not, I think it was said we might have been impressed. So, interesting things. Sometimes smoke comes out. Sometimes it's not true. Sometimes it is true. So, are you praying or you might as well?
Deep breaths, man. I'm just like, oh my gosh. Between the last subject just now about the coaching search and this.
Yes, I mean it was a good segue.
Yeah.
I know we haven't covered him. We will cover him on this draft channel. I like him, and we don't have to get into a whole breakdown of him, but got it. What do you? Any quick thoughts?
Quick thoughts. Coach, you go first, man.
well, I was shocked and I'm not shocked. I'm not shocked because he kind of maybe the physical characteristics of a long rangy player that maybe Masai would want. I think there is upside there. I know you and we've all talked about it with Koulibaly. I think there's more of a two-way potential for him than maybe some of the other prospects in the draft that may not have right now, anyways. So, you know, Koulibaly is an interesting prospect, that's for sure. Would I be shocked if they take him at 13? No. Would he be my 13th pick? No. I get a couple other guys who I've mentioned on to prior shows, Wallace, George, or Grady Dick if they're there.
Would you take Jackson over him?
Jackson?
GG. Your man.
Oh man!
Now you're pretending you don't know who he is.
Would I take GG?
You're going a long way, huh?
Man,
we have come a long way.
That's a really good question. If I would take him over Koulibaly, my point is I don't know if I take any of them.
Okay.
In the 10 to 16 range. Koulibaly at 20 or 25, yeah, take a chance on him. 13 just seems like a bit of a reach, but once again, Masai, if he wants this guy, he goes out against them, i.e. Bruno Caboclo.
I will say there is no the footage on him is not in VHS. So that is always a positive. I'm joking, people. Don't worry. I don't think he's going to be completely 2 years away from being 2 years away. And I think the positive thing is that compared to some other projects in the draft, he does seem to be rising, and he is playing at a very high level and shooting this year decently well in high pressure situations. So I will give him that. It's not quite as raw as some dudes. I'll also quickly just say, and we don't have to talk about it because we're actually going to be getting out of here soon, but Canadian prospect news, Zach Edey is deciding that he is going to go back and go with Purdue for another year. So I think that that's probably a good decision for him if he wants to move up his draft stock. But yeah, beyond, I don't know if you had a full opportunity to talk about Koulibaly from your standpoint, but we'll do that, and then we'll probably go to a close.
Sure. This ties into the previous conversation with the coaching search. Why does this franchise make everything so difficult, so hard? I mean, I'm sure the young man's going to be a fine prospect. I got no issue with him. Actually, I think he's a pretty decent prospect overall. But we are going up to 13 to get the guy. Like, I mean, I just want a guy once in a while just to just polish and get a bucket. Like, that's all I want. It's not that hard. Like, I don't know why we always have to take guys that we got to chisel off the corners and smooth out the edges on all of them all the time when they come in. Because I mark my words, people, if we draft him, I don't want to hear anyone telling me now when we're like 40 games or 50 games in and we don't have any shooting on an RLTV, space in this case, saying we don't have any shooting and there's a duplication between he and Scotty. I don't want to hear it. I'm telling you right now, I'm going to put up a disclaimer pretty much saying like, hey, we knew this was going to happen. I don't know why we keep going down this path of picking the same dude in the draft every chance we get. Good gosh, man. It's like it just, it never ends, man. I can't believe it. I knew it the moment I saw him coming up. It's like sitting there like a blinker, like flashing lights, when they say, in the mirror to say, objects appear closer than you see them in this case here. It was coming down the highway. It's like, here we go. Here we go. Started off as just a first round late pick 27. I was like, oh boy. Then he started getting the early 20s, like, oh boy, here we go. Then he was like high teens, like, oh boy. And now here we are now, top 13 pick, and guess who's knocking on the door? And it's like, geez, you can't. I could have written this script about 2 months ago in this case here with this kid in this case. Like, it's like, oh my gosh, please, man. I'm just like, I just want a guy who can actually just play right off the jump. That's all I want.
I mean, I for one would like to get a second pick in this draft and at least get one pick be a
Right.
relatively safe pick who will be guaranteed to be an impact player. I'm not saying that Bilal won't. It's just I want one pick that is just a safe, guaranteed. Like this guy will be a rotation player without question on any team.
Right. We know he's going to be your top 6 or 7 at worst. And at best, he might end up being, who knows? He could be like a low-end all-star if that's the case. And who knows? Once in a while, you get one that hits the jackpot. But all I'm saying is, I'd rather take that than saying, like, well, you know what? He could be, in this case, an all-star. Heck, half these dudes could be an all-star if you want to put it that way in this case, in the future. It could be like some Hall of Fame all-star. Just pick the dude that can play right now, man. Like, I'm tired of all this experimentation. Okay, I don't want any more. Like, we're doing experiment A, experiment B, and white papers and research and this and that, and we're looking at the game, and we got a bunch of guys here, and we could get, what happens if we get a bunch of 6, 7 guys that can't shoot? We can teach them how to shoot. I'm tired of it. I'm just over it. That's my thoughts about folks. I don't know. You know where to find me on Twitter. All right, for all the folks in this case here are big fans in this case here, of the young man. If you're big fans of French basketball, knock yourself out. You know what my Twitter account is, man.
I mean, I'll just say I was originally going to make a joke, but then it's actually not a full joke. I was going to say I wonder if I'm going to get published before we actually pick a coach, and I'm getting close to it because I'm actually in the review stage, so it actually might happen, and that's a long process. I'm just going to say, like it's been a couple months for me, and I'm getting close.
Right.
I'm like, come on, can we get a coach? Can we get a coach?
Opposite
Please?
end of coach's due diligence is dithering. It can look, depending on how you want to frame it, it can look either way. And it's starting to look more of the latter in my mind, but we'll see. Because I don't know why in this case, if we're getting a coach, in this case, that we know it's already out of the playoffs, and we got to wait till 2 weeks before a draft. the
Well,
day that we announced him?
that's why I said the other day in one of the spaces, I'm like, or actually on Live by the Three, their show, I said like, like you've said it as well. It's like if we waited all this time to get either a TikTok star or to get someone else who's available, what are we doing? Like if Nash was the person, or if it's
Right.
JJ Redick, I don't think that JJ Redick is preoccupied by a lot of basketball things right now.
Right.
Other than ESPN, I don't know how his ESPN contract works.
Right. And podcasts. Like, I mean, but like you get him anytime you want.
He seemed more than happy to go right away, to have a conversation and be
Well,
interviewed. So
he
yeah,
said it. He's been bold saying he would like to coach someday.
so
Like
please.
JJ, like he ain't one to kind of hold back. So he was like, yeah, I want to coach. So he's putting it out there. Hello. So like of course the Raptors said, sure, come on by. Like I don't understand this mindset of like unless one of the guys are playing here tonight, that's the only thing that makes sense to me.
Absolutely. So yeah, I mean, with that being said, there is a game on, people, so we're probably going to be going. And so with that being said, it has been a fun conversation. All these conversations are fun. Look forward to a bunch of our I think you guys have agreed, thank you, that we will be covering Koulibaly now. We were going to cover him before anyways. We're definitely going to cover Kobe Buffkin. I'm not sure about Jet Howard. We'll see if we have the time. And then Maxwell Lewis, only because the Raptors did, we did happen to have a workout with him. So it is going to be interesting. By the way, it may be that Koulibaly goes before us. We don't know this yet. But so far, it is an interesting draft that is shaping up. And we will see the moves that happen. I do hear a lot of smoke that the Raptors may make a move to get another pick, and I like that news at least. So yeah, with that being said, like, comment, and subscribe if you liked the episode, and even if you didn't, still comment, give us the feedback, and have a good day and take care.